Hey, welcome back to Rust Order Garage and the 51 Hudson build. To the point of wiring up the dash cluster. And just a reminder, if you like seeing different car builds, subscribe to the channel. There's another one up there that's going to get done. That's a 48 Buick Roadmaster, one of my bucket list cars that I drove 6 hours to pick up last year. And yeah, that's going to be on the channel too. But let's get back to the Hudson.
All right, it is admittedly at least a few days later because been doing other things and working and yada yada. The car is out getting lettered as we speak. In fact, it's almost done. It's been there for almost a week, and a buddy of mine's doing an excellent job on it. I can't wait to post pictures of it. It's going to look great. But this is the dash assembled. See how it gauges in the back there. I still have to drill some holes for turn signal indicators and high beam light. Surface engine soon light. I don't know if I'm going to put it here or put it in the dash. The factory dash actually has a hole on the left side that used to be for turn signals. I don't know if I'm going to make that for the service engine soon. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. But while the car's away and I can't do anything with the wiring on that side, I can put the wiring half on this. And what I want to do is make like a harness from this to the car so it's removable. And I got this, and that's the other great thing about buying a donor vehicle. I just cut this out of that '02 Tahoe, which did not supply the engine for this car, but supplied other miscellaneous parts. In fact, it's actually going to supply transmission, because here's the transmission I took out of the Tahoe yesterday, and it's got 200,000 miles on it, but the fluid looks good. It's obviously been serviced because there's a nut welded on the drain plug on the pan, so it's not like it's all original. And I did put it in the air, and it did shift through the gears. So fingers crossed. I'm going to take that apart and convert that to two-wheel drive. YouTube trained. So in the meantime, I'm going to wire this up to this panel. So just starting off one thing at a time here. First thing I'm doing is just tying all the hot leads of the lights together, soldered them, all the grounds for those lights, soldered them. Then I got to pick up the light and the ground on the tach and the speedometer, so do that. I also have to set the dip switches on this tachometer, and because I'm running the LS, I'm going to set them to 4-cylinder. I believe on the Tune you can adjust the pulses to turn it to like an 8-cylinder if you're using an aftermarket tach or that didn't have adjustments for 4, 6, 8 cylinders. But this does have dip switches, so I'm going to set it to 4 cylinders, and then I'm going to grab the light and the ground off of them and tie those to these wires here. So this is set to default 8 cylinders. I need 4 cylinders, which is off, on, off, off, on, and the other one's already off. So that's simple enough to do. All right, now we'll finish getting the lights wired up on this. All right, so directions are actually good for these gauges, and in fact, they're even labeled on the back of the gauge as far as what's what. These have 2 different colors for lights. They have white or amber, but I don't think there's only one color, I believe, for these gauges is white. So I'm going to wire up the white light. I got a selection of different color wire here in my pile because I'm anal about color codes sometimes. So I'm going to wire this up kind of like GM would do. That way I'll have an idea of what I'm looking at here, even if it's not written down, but I am going to write a little schematic for it. And the gauges come with new crimp-on connectors, so get that installed and plug that in. There we go. Get this wired. I'll put it on time lapse because I don't think anybody wants to see me wire everything that slow. But if you got any questions, just post them up. So I just tied all the lights in, powers and grounds. Do a quick sanity check. Make sure they work. Get my battery here. And I can see all the little guys working. I can't tell if the big ones are working. It's like you have to get a good look at them. Let's see here. They are not, but that does not mean there's a problem. I remember I have Marshalls in my 51 F1. When I turn on the lights, all the little guys turn on. The big ones don't turn on until I turn the key on. So I think I need power to the power side as well. So let me wire that in. All right, so for these gauges, I need a key on 12 volts. As well as a battery hot. So, keeping with my GM color codes, I'm going to use orange for battery, pink for key on. Wire it up. Okay, so I have the key on power wired in. I have my 12 volt hot part wired in, but I'm not going to connect that. That has to be for memory or something. So I have my gray light wire tied to my pink key on wire. And now let's see if these lights work. See that? There we go. Lights work, and speedo and tack work. Sweet. All right, so next thing I'll do is wire in power and grounds to the 3 gauges. I'm going to run those on separate power and ground, key on, and my fuel gauge wire. And then I'll show you how I can test my fuel gauge once it's wired up. All right, so I have pretty much everything wired up except for I still have to add the LEDs for turn signals, high beam, and decide what I'm going to do with the service engine light. Here's a quick way to test your gas gauge before you put the thing in, at least depending on your ohm range. This is a GM 0 to 90, so to make sure it works, I have battery here. I have obviously ground and power. Power is going to go to the power side of the gauge. Ground is going to go to the ground side of the gauge, and then you have the sending wire. Now, if you take the sending wire and tie it directly to ground, the gauge should go to empty. If I put a 90 ohm resistor between the sending unit and the ground, it should go to full. And that's what I have right now. So you see that I have a resistor just tied into my ground lines and to that purple wire, which is my sending unit for the gauge. So right now that's simulating a full tank. So when I touch this to the battery, I should go to full. And there it is. So I know the gauge is working. And I think that resistor was like 89 ohms or something, so it's close. So I know the gauge is working for sure. And if I ground it, it'll go to empty. I can do that. I'm also testing my voltmeter here, making sure that works, and that works good. So that's that. So next I'll remove the resistor and tie that purple wire right to ground and see what that does. Okay, now you can see I have the purple sending unit sending wire tied directly to ground. So now if I touch this to the battery, I should go to empty, which would be 0 ohms, and there it is. So that works. So I know my gas gauge works, I know my voltmeter works, water temp and oil pressure. I don't know the ohm range on those, so I can't test them without knowing that, but I'm not too concerned. I'll test those once the car fires up. But a big thing is the gas gauge. That's a pretty important gauge. All right, things are getting messy here as usual, but now I'm playing with LEDs. I have some 3mm clear LEDs with little chrome housings. Bought a ton of them at one point because I do this more than once in a while. So these LEDs can be really bright. I use them for turn signal indicators and high beam and whatever, because of course they don't burn out, but they are very bright. Some people don't like them as much, but to dim them down, I put a 10K resistor on it, and I'll power it up here and show you what it looks like. And you can see that's, I don't know if it shows on the camera. It's pretty bright. If that's staring at you at night, you might not like it, but I put the chrome cover on with a little diffuser that comes with it. It's not as bad. Now it probably doesn't even show up on camera because it's so much dimmer. But without the cover and with the cover. So I'm going to do that for high beam. Green ones for turn signals. Still not sure if I'm going to do service engine with the LED in the dash, probably, or in the cluster or in the dash housing. Not sure yet. But in the meantime, I'll get the turn signals done, high beam signal, high beam indicator done, and see what it looks like from there. All right, so we got all the LEDs installed now. Show you what some of them look like. Let's see here. This should be right turn signal. And it works. And this one should be left turn signal. Good. This one should be high beams. Good. And the service engine soon light, that works backwards. So I have to put the ground onto its, I don't know what you want to call it, trigger wire. Where's my brown wire in this pile? I have everything color coded to GM. There it is. So I'll put the ground on the brown wire, and if I give juice to my key on power, there's my service engine soon light, which is yellow. Not sure how well that shows up, but it works. So last thing I'll have to do with this cluster is just tie in the connector to the harness there. That'll give me an umbilical, and we can start putting this back in. So that'll be it for this video. little teaser what's coming up next.